Hello and welcome back to a new Rage Gaming video. My name is Hollow and today we're talking more Mortal Shell, the newly released Souls-like that has seriously impressed me so far with its many cool new mechanics, a great intense dark atmosphere, that mysterious story, and some cool cats too. No really, check out the cool cat. But hey, just like any Souls-like, there's a lot of stuff that you might miss because it's pretty well hidden, or maybe the game just never told you about it. So today, here's my 15 secrets or things the game just doesn't tell you in Mortal Shell. Firstly, around the different areas of the game, you'll find lots of hidden locations. Many of these are covered by vines or roots that are actually breakable. The obvious ones that you probably found are the tunnels that are only slightly covered, but there's actually a lot of items that are hidden under these in corners or much less obvious places. And there's different things like the narthex teleporters, which, if you're paying attention, can take you to otherwise unreachable places. Take this teleporter on the middle left of the main narthex room. It's hidden in an alcove, and it'll teleport you to this hidden area to loot one of the permanent upgrades for the seal. Pretty good, which means exploring and interacting with the different stuff in the environment is well worth it. Speaking of hidden stuff, when you're in the fog, which is triggered in a couple of ways, firstly by holding one of the glands that you gathered from killing a boss. Well, while you're in the fog, you can now open the many stone chests around the world that you might have noticed, and these have some insane consumables and are well worth looting. This does come at a risk though, since there's lots of enemies whenever you're in the fog. You might want to be running through this like a madman just to make it through the gauntlet, but if you do slow down, clear areas, loot some chests, there's a lot of secrets and some good items. On that note, I did say there was another way to trigger the fog. At the hub, aka Fulgrim Tower, you can talk to the creepy fellow, Festus, and offer him just one glimpse to trigger the fog mechanic. This is a really reliable way to enter the fog and go loot those stone chests or farm some tar thanks to the insane amount of enemies. If you ever want to end the effect and end the fog, just go talk to Festus again and offer him one more glimpse. This is insanely worth doing, guys. The chests have tar items in them, they have quenching acid for the weapon upgrades, and this is also where you find the second resolve ability for the hallowed sword. So do some fog exploring when you get a chance. For number 4, I want to mention that right from the beginning of the game, you can instantly pick up the incredibly powerful resolve ability for the hallowed sword, that mechanical spike, which is hidden in the chest behind Grisha, the boss from the beta turned mini boss in full release. Grisha is just chilling in his cave right next to the Fulgrim Tower, the hub. If you head out through the broken door next to the sister, it's right across this area. Avoid the traps, kill Grisha, and grab yourself the spike. If you go straight to the workbench and upgrade your hallowed sword with the spike, you will unlock the 2 resolve cost thrust attack. Not only does this attack do massive damage, stagger enemies, but it also gives you iframes while you're using it. In fact, every weapon ability does, so you can use them to burst the enemy while avoiding damage. If you grab this right at the beginning of your playthrough, you'll be able to crush enemies, do big bursts, and be prepared for your first boss fight. Double that up with going into the fog immediately and finding the second upgrade, even better. Furthermore, just like the hallowed sword, each and every weapon does come with 2 potential upgrades to unlock and get those 2 resolve abilities. If you're wondering where to look for these, each upgrade is actually found in the area you get the weapon. The first upgrade is always quite close to the start of the region, just like we just mentioned with the hallowed sword, and the second is deeper and more hidden, like the fog. With that in mind, you should have some good direction now on where to start your searches. Now let's move on to some great item mechanics. Items like mushrooms respawn on a timer. You could run a quick loop around the area to gather a nice store of healing for your next venture, or just double back in a tough spot to claim some more mushrooms in an area you've already been. The mushrooms are on a 5-minute respawn timer, so if enough time has passed, you can just go grab them again. This is important because you aren't really given tons of healing items by default. You have to gather them or trade for them. Speaking of important items though, there's a few that I think are particularly good for boss fights that you might not know about, so let's talk about some food items, some tokens, and the scriptures. Firstly, with food, we have the boiled frog, which gives you 3 minutes of faster stamina regeneration, but 5 minutes when maxed out. Basically, the duration of a boss fight, which is very strong. We have 2 types of moonshine to use. Each gives you resolve when you use them. Inferior moonshine costs health to drink, and you lose less when it's maxed out. Meanwhile, the superior moonshine just gives you resolve at no cost, but when maxed out, gives you 2 resolve, even better. The 2 tokens of the game, Mortal and Ornate, trigger when you harden. Mortal tokens will give you health back, while Ornate provides a buff that reduces the next damage you're going to take. Then we have the scriptures, which provide a buff until you consume that buff by parrying. Repent triggers a burn effect when you successfully parry, while Ardor provides a poison effect both dealing damage over time. You can even make parries do more damage themselves with Scripture of Despair, or refund your resolve with Defiance. Finally, Euphoria will grant you health on successful parry, and you can stack all of these together at once for one powerful parry. If you do fuck up the parry and do it too early or too late and get hit, these buffs aren't consumed until you successfully parry. Finally, absolutely clutch in an important boss fight is the ethereal Diapason. I might have mispronounced that, I don't know. When you die the first time, you can reclaim your shell, right? But that's it now. If you die, you die. However, if you take one of these ethereals, you can die and then reclaim the shell again. Basically, 2 extra lives in a boss fight instead of just 1. That's really good. Alright, so let's talk some useful advice for your playthrough. The merchant offers unlimited cooked rats for a health restore, costing 100 tar each. So if you find yourself struggling in boss fights, or you just want to be more prepared for any incoming fight or new area, you can buy a lot of these rats and save them for the fight. This makes things a lot easier the first time around, trust me. If you don't know where the merchant is, just go to the Fulgrim Tower, the hub. On the top level, go outside, go around to the bell, go up the stairs, and there he is. Next, this one might be obvious to a Souls player, but for new players, maybe not so. Basically, there's no shame in running past enemies to progress an area if you're struggling. Often, you run by so fast they can't even retaliate before you're already gone, and at worst case, you just dodge roll out of there. This can be done to progress a tough area by running past those enemies until you reach, say, the next sister checkpoint and then reset the area. Any chasing enemy cannot attack you while you're talking to her. In fact, they'll just stand there and back off. For number 10, did you know that the Solomon Shell has a passive that increases the speed you become familiar with items? If you're wanting to be as efficient as possible, you can grab this passive and then swap to Solomon whenever you're in the hub or using an effigy, and then max out the items you're not fully familiar with. Instead of having to use an item like 10 times, you only need to use it twice. As I've mentioned, there's a lot of good items in the game that have great use for boss fights or different situations. And when you max out your familiarity, they offer even better perks like more resolve or even more effective healing. Another great item you can grab from the merchant while you're at him from the very start of the game is the tool set, which you can use to repair the Ballistazooka. Yeah, it's actually called that. These tools cost a whopping 8,000 tar, so it's no joke, but you can easily head into a temple and go to, say, the halfway point where the sister's found there, pop a bell item for extra tar gains, and then kill all the valuable enemies, reset the area with the sister, and do it again. This is a good way to farm tar. When you do eventually get your hands on enough tar and buy the tools, you repair that Zuka at the workbench, and now you've got a main ranged weapon for the rest of the game. This thing destroys enemies, as you can see, and though the ammo is fairly limited, it can be clutch in tough areas or even in a boss fight. Lastly, let's talk about some combat stuff. Firstly, weapon combos can actually stagger bosses if you didn't know. Most weapons will stagger any enemy after a good string of attacks. The safest bet I've found with any weapon is light, light, heavy, or even light, 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 heavy if you're using the hammer and chisel. If you trigger the stun, you're able to create a window of safety to heal, or just keep going and punish the boss even more while it's still staggered. You will need to time a harden during these combos while chaining attacks into, say, a boss, but it's well worth it for the big damage spike. Speaking on combos though, you can do a colossal combo if you make use of resolve abilities on top, making use of the harden iframes and the resolve iframes. If we do that light, light, heavy combo, we'll stagger the enemy, even a boss, and while staggered, I can pull out another 3 to 4 hit combo. And just as the boss is about to get up and attack me, I can end this combo with a resolve ability for even more iframes and more burst. This might even stagger them again if you time this right, which is incredible burst damage. The shorter a boss fight, the more chance you have to defeat it, there's less likelihood that you'll die. For number 14, while exploring, you'll often come across archers, perhaps even a pack of these jerks. There's an interesting mechanic where if you run right up to them, they'll put away their ranged weapons to swap to a melee weapon to deal with you while you're close to them. But you can run up to them and trigger this effect by running near and around them briefly and then moving away. And then they'll just keep coming at you in melee mode, rather than just keep shooting at you. This can make a pack of archers a lot more manageable. It's something I do pretty often. Finally, for number 15, some scummy tactics for you to use in combat if you're ever low health and out of heals, or maybe you just have no morals and want to full cheese your opponents. Firstly, the running attack is a bit broken in Mortal Shell. If you sprint and then use a heavy attack, you'll do this big leaping attack that can close gaps. It'll even stagger most enemies too. I find myself starting a lot of fights with a running attack, staggering them and then comboing them with a harden. The poor AI just can't handle it, and it gives you a nice advantage in most fights. Or you could full scum it and running attack, walk away, running attack, walk away, running attack, running attack, running attack. This even works with charged heavy attacks, even better with a heavier weapon like the smoldering mace. If you stand back and let the poor sods walk slowly into your pre-charged up heavy to send them flying, and then step back and do it again until they're dead, there's not much they can do. Look, I did say this was scummy, right? But hey, it's possible, and if you're struggling or you have no morals, you can technically do these things. Anything goes, it's your playthrough, I guess. Alright, so there's a whole bunch of little details, secrets, or things the game just doesn't tell you in Mortal Shell to use to your advantage. I hope this was interesting or useful, and if there's anything you found that would fit in this video but I didn't mention it, then drop a comment, you might help someone. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.